Your relationship with wealth says more about your confidence than your bank account. In this episode, Nancy reveals why having a wealth plan, trusting your discernment, and leading with generosity are the foundations of modern soft power. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soft Power Project. Today, we have a very exciting guest, Nancy, and she's from Canada, and she's the president and founder of Women, Worth, and Wellness. And she has been coaching, advising women on building wealth. And it's all about the self-worth and net worth and philanthropy and also building your legacy. And just thank you so much, Nancy, to be on this podcast with me.
You're welcome, Sherry, and good for you to be doing all the great work that you're doing. So important. So important.
Oh, and I feel like you're definitely a pioneer in the wellness industry as well. And you founded the company in 1994, right?
Yes, good research.
And I mean, just to, on the top of my head, I mean, you've been doing this for 31 years. You've been coaching women on how to build wealth and hold wealth. What is the biggest shift that you've seen in women and their relationship with wealth, during this 30 years of your career?
The thing that I think is so interesting, and it becomes more evident as I'm doing all of these podcast interviews, is there's some women who get it in
Mm,
terms of putting together a wealth plan and knowing how important that is. I think there's still some opportunities for their wealth plans to be enhanced. But I'm really amazed at the number of women who haven't yet gotten started. They're just hanging back. They're hanging back from the whole situation. And they're hanging back for all the reasons that we all have experienced, which is, I don't have that much money. I don't have any
mm,
understanding of how this all works. I don't know how to get started, so I'm just going to forget about this for the time being. For the
mm,
women
mhm,
who are doing some things, I think the biggest opportunity of all is
mm,
now how they have new power with their philanthropic focus. And again, I mentioned that with Melinda French Gates and Mackenzie Scott as being fabulous role models. Now, none of us really, I don't think, perhaps, are as wealthy as they are. But the thing that is most impressive to me in terms of what they have done is they didn't have to do what they're doing, but they've got all this money that they're now stewarding, and really, to the best of their ability, they're wanting to make the world a better place, especially focusing on women.
mhm. Absolutely. And I do wanted to ask you this question, and I noticed that you've been using the word stewarding or steward quite a lot and throughout other podcasts that you do as well. Could you help me to define that word and what it means in relation to wealth?
Well, very simply, women have always wanted to have a seat at the table. And when you have
Mm,
a seat at the table, you have a voice at the table. So now you're stewarding what your thoughts are in a public
mm,
forum so that other people can hear. The other example is women often have taken a back seat or at least are a passenger. They're not driving the bus or driving the car, driving the direction where they feel they want to go. So it really is a new power opportunity to have that seat at the table, have a voice at the table, have that steering wheel in your hand so that you're driving where you want to go. And it's kind of unnerving because this is kind of a new reality for women, and women never want to put themselves front and center because other people can say, well, who does she think she is? Like, why is she doing that? And, all the whispering that goes on. So, and women know about this, so they don't want to put themselves front and center. On the other hand, it's more important than ever that women do step up and step out and make the difference that they know they can, because women have tremendous capabilities and tremendous capacity. So really stick your neck out and go for it.
mm. So would you say to steward your wealth, it means that you actually put yourself out there, and even if it's uncomfortable, but use your voice and stand up for yourself.
Correct. And in doing so, you need to be extremely discerning because you're taking a bit of a risk by stepping out and stepping up. You really want to make sure that those dollars are directed properly, because sometimes dollars can be directed to an organization that isn't all that it seems. So that's why you need to be very, very discerning and do your research to make sure that that business to whom you're directing dollars is as worthy as you believe they are. You never want to have any surprises about, some wrong person being on their board or some wrong investment occurred. So really, you have to do your homework. And that's why I say you need to be discerning.
Mm. And, on my platform, I mean, this is kind of my personal journey as well. I've been talking a lot about this people-pleasing tendency that women tend to have, and it seems to be the thing that we pick up at a very young age without even knowing. And I noticed that it's also universal, no matter where you're from, what language you speak. It just seems like that's just the way we are. And women hitting mid 30s and 40s, we're starting to really shedding that mask. And I wanted to tie it back to the word discerning to understand the boundaries. Would you say that we have to be able to set proper boundaries and actually to understand our own authentic voice and to take away that people pleasing tendency in order to have that wisdom?
Definitely. Proper boundaries, but also proper expectations. The one thing that I advocate very, very strongly is that you work with professional advisors. I don't think even dentists do their own dental work. So don't try to figure all of these big things out all by yourself, and especially as it pertains to your wealth. There's so many professionals who are so good at what they do that I really encourage women to have a fabulous, trusted wealth advisor who can help you with all of these things. Now, not every wealth advisor is going to encourage you to think about philanthropy, because to be a very successful wealth advisor, you want to have as many assets under your jurisdiction as possible. So if you're directing dollars to a philanthropic concern, some of those dollars under that person's jurisdiction may go out. So sometimes you have to say to your trusted advisor, I'm really thinking about doing something philanthropically, certainly as it pertains to a legacy plan. Tell me what you know about that. What is your advice to me? And that's when you will find out how sophisticated that wealth advisor is with whom you are working. So it's very much a very sophisticated dialogue back and forth. And often people outgrow their advisors. But in doing so, by that point in time, that advisor has probably become one of your best friends. So now it becomes increasingly difficult. But at the same time, you are the number one asset, and you are the person who needs to protect yourself the most. Nobody else will. So you really have to be selfish in seeking advice to help you be as healthy and as wealthy as you possibly can be, and to feel on top of your game as the days unfold.
That's wonderful advice. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of my story, but I had opportunities to actually work with a couple of different lawyers because of my, current situation with custody battle with my ex. But while that was very difficult, but I also learned something so important is that you need to walk into the situation, even just meeting a lawyer, with clarity, knowing that what I want and not to kind of hand over, my desired or values to the lawyer. And I think what you're saying is something very similar, is that you do need to know exactly what you want, or at this point in time, this is what I wanted to invest in. And in order to have a better relationship with an advisor, right?
Sherry, you're spot on, because really what it is you need to own yourself. You need to own your existence. You need to own your health, and you need to own your wealth. and you need to own the situation that you are in the midst of so that you can go into that situation exactly knowing who you are and what your challenges are, and then start asking the questions, and then listen very, very carefully to hear what advice is coming back, and then clarify and confirm so that you're understanding. It really is a very sophisticated dance that you're in the middle of, and active listening and active questioning is crucial.
I often talk about active listening and how difficult it is for us to actually listen in a conversation and not been, like been bombarded with our own thoughts or what we wanted to say. But you mentioned active questioning, and I never heard that before. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, or how do we develop that skill?
Well, again, good listening on your part to pick that up.
Thank you.
But it's true. You head into a discussion and then you hear what that person is saying. And you want the conversation to be very respectful. You're not challenging. But at the same time, if you haven't truly understood, then you can say, well, could you repeat that to me again? I'm not sure that I understand exactly what you've just communicated. And maybe they haven't done their best job communicating. It's like a really, really, really sophisticated dance routine. You're tripping over somebody else's foot and it's like, okay, let's do a redo here. But it's so, so crucial when you own your situation that you make sure you're getting it as right as you possibly can. Because once you get that right, then you go on to next from there. And you don't want to go on to next from the wrong point. So that's why you really want to know exactly, okay, where are we at? This is what I understand. No, this is what I was saying. And then you go on from there.
Right. Do you have any interesting stories where you have watched or witnessed your client's growth, maybe from someone who doesn't quite understand how to handle wealth? Like, I think that was very much me a couple years ago, into someone who is so confident and so comfortable with wealth.
Well, I can get an example. It's about 90%. We had a good friend visiting us this summer, and I know her well, good friend. I know her advisor well. But she said, okay, Nancy, I've got a Zoom review scheduled with my advisor. She spends most of her time away and is just home for a couple of months in the summertime. Anyway, I said, I'm more than happy to. So I'm on the sideline so I can hear the whole interaction between the two. And she's very confident in this advisor. But at the same time, when markets go up and down and you're away and you're at a cocktail and somebody said, oh my God, did you see what happened today in the markets? You don't want to be an idiot. You want to be somewhat informed, and you certainly want to know where you stand. And often the conversation goes to holdings that you have. What about crypto? Is this something that you're involved? So everybody considers themselves to be a reasonably sophisticated person, but that wealth advisor is the person who can help that person present themselves well. So the conversation goes and, just checking in, how are we doing? And he said, there's one thing that I want you to know, and I'm confirming it with you again, that at any point in time, there is always 3 years worth of monthlies set aside, and that's ongoing. So you just know that if the markets are up and down and all over the place, your monthlies are secure for at least 3 years. Okay, so all of a sudden she doesn't have to worry that, oh my God, this month maybe I'm not going to get what I'm supposed to get because the markets have gone down. He's reassured her. Then he said, okay, on your open portfolio, I do want to take some profits because we've got 3 holdings there that have exceeded our target. And I want to take some profits and I want to reinvest them. And the 3 that I'm taking profits from, and he gave her the specific names of the 3. So now she's got some names of some companies that if she's at a cocktail, she can say, yeah, my guy just took some profits on blah, 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 whatever. Not, I don't have a clue what's going on. And then he said, these are the ones that I want to invest in. So now she's been told specifically what dollars are coming from there and what dollars are going here. Now she's very knowledgeable. So it's like, okay, well, this is great. They're motoring along. And then he said, I know from time to time you like to take a lump sum. Are you looking to take a lump sum now? And she said, as a matter of fact, I am. Okay, well, we've got some money set aside. How much do you want? And she tells him, and he said, no problem. I'll make sure that that gets transferred to you, the way it normally comes through. So all the way along, everything is just tickety-boo. Like she's feeling like $1,000,000 because she's got a whole level of confidence that he's doing everything that she expects him to do, but he's given her reassurance that everything's in order. So she'll be sleeping well. She'll go back to the South with a huge level of confidence. And anyway, at that point, before they start to talk about the weather and family, I piped in. I said, that was fabulous. That was absolutely perfect because I really reinforce everybody having a trusted advisor. And you've just proven, you're extremely competent in your role. But more importantly, you've given your client a whole level of confidence that you're doing everything that you've told her you would do.
And that is one of the most important thing as an advisor, right? To really allow your clients to have that confidence.
Correct. Exactly. And a
Mm.
whole plan in place. And now with Zoom, you don't have to drive to somebody's office and find a parking space and blah, 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 and have all kinds of paperwork that you head home with. Now it's up on the screen if you want it or not. And a Zoom is 15 minutes, half an hour at the most. The wealth advisor I know would be well prepared for that meeting with specifics, and the client now has had a personal interaction and knows that everything is so. Regular reviews are just as important as the content of that review.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you maybe have gotten this question before, but for someone like me, or for the listeners are listening now, they just started to build their worth. I was a single mom about 7 years ago, and that was really when I started to even think about accumulating wealth. So for someone in that stage, what would you advise them to start doing?
Really, again, I go back to the dentist example. Don't try to figure it out all by yourself or step away from it because it's like this is too much. This is absolutely too much. Now there are many more options online, and I think this is exactly where AI is going to kick in. On the other hand, you still need to have a personal interaction because a whole wealth scenario is much more than just what stocks do you hold or what mutual funds do you hold. And so shop around. I'm a certified financial planner, and CFPs I know are North American. I'm not sure if they're worldwide. But what you can do is just Google CFP near me and then get a second opinion. Just try to find that person. Ask friends, ask relatives, who are you working with? They don't have to tell you how much money they've got. You're not really getting into all their personal affairs. But who is the wealth advisor that you are getting your advice from? And that's probably a good place to start for even a first opinion or a second opinion. And I guess if you're just getting started, when you connect with this person, just say, I'm brand new at this. Are these the kinds of clients that you've been working with? And if they say, no, my minimum is whatever, okay, who can you refer me to that I can contact to establish a relationship? Because I'm in the process of seeking someone with whom I can work. So important. And again, I've mentioned this several times, is when you have a wealth plan, you have to anticipate health-related challenges in that wealth plan. So make sure that whoever you're working with has said, what if you are diagnosed with breast cancer? How are you going to deal with this if you have to take time off work or if you have to go get some medical treatment? What about disability? What about premature death? All of those things need to be in that wealth plan. The day after something happens is not the day to think about getting protection in those areas. So a whole wealth plan is exactly very, very holistic.
And I'm hearing a lot about just be proactive, right?
Correct.
Ask the question, even if this person doesn't really quite serve you, but he or she will know someone, but just ask the question, be proactive, and not to just be passive and stand back and waiting for things to happen. We're waiting for others to take care of us. But I think there is that tendency for some people to kind of just want it to wait, to feel like, oh, it's okay, someone else can take care of that. What would you usually say to this person?
No, I said, no, no, don't. Do not allow that to happen. It is your life. How much do you value your own life? Another example that I just remembered that is really, really powerful. I mean, the power of the wealth advisor. This fellow that I know was the trustee for a young person. And when the person turned 18, then the funds are transferred over to him to manage from here on in. Now, it's the same wealth advisor, but a different person in charge of those funds. So the trustee is there with the 18-year-old meeting with the wealth advisor. And the wealth advisor says to the 18-year-old, okay, I'm more than happy to work with you. It is my pleasure to do so. However, I have two requirements if you're going to be a client of mine. One is that you have a current will, and the other is that you have a current accountant with whom you have a relationship. And I thought, oh my goodness, for that person to have introduced the whole concept of life expectancy with you need a will at the age of 18. Often people, even 70, haven't done a will because they think they're going to die if they get one. I thought that is so, so great. And that's what wealth advisors have to do is put scenarios in front of you so that we can work together on getting a great plan in place. It's no more rocket science than that. It's just that the emotions and the desire to do it often get in the way.
Correct. And I think it's a lot of fears or even fear of uncertainty to kind of stop us from even thinking about it. And I love these advice. I think that's just so powerful. And I think no matter where you're at, whatever stage you're at, just be proactive and do as much as you can. And there is always someone that can help you. Right?
Definitely. I'm just going to say, and know that you are worthy in stepping up and stepping out and asking questions and seeking that person with whom you can work. You are worthy. You are worthy. It is your life. It is the number one asset that you have. So you really, really want to protect it to the very, very best way you possibly can.
I think that's also something that a lot of people struggles with is just knowing their worth. And I think for women, we often tied our self-worth with you have to have a family where you have to have kids or relationships or people that you can help and support. And we often forget that we actually need to help and support ourselves.
Correct.
And
First.
no one else would do that.
First. Right. First. You're absolutely right because we have an idea of what an ideal life is. And more often than not, that life is not ideal. So then the question is, okay, well, who am I and what do I want? And how can I move towards what I want? And if that's what I want, how can I stay healthy and obviously wealthy to the extent that I need to so that I can move towards what I want my life to be? So it's a lot of questioning of yourself. You do talk to yourself. Don't talk out loud because they might take you away. But, you do have to talk to yourself. And obviously give yourself lots of credit when things work and give yourself a lot of credit for just stepping up to that simple process of who am I and what do I want? And how can I maximize everything that I can do so I'm enhancing my life every day?
Oh, I love that. And I'm so curious to ask you about someone that plays a really large role in your life, which is your mom, Eve. And I was reading this article that's on your website about her. The story is just so beautiful. And I would just wanted to ask you because, you grew up watching your mom running a business at a time where women aren't encouraged to
Right.
do so, right? And so, what do you think that planted in you at a young age, even before you realized it?
Well, that's really, really good question because the more I do this business, the more I reflect on her life. I'm the youngest of four, and she was in her 40s. I think she was 43 when I was born, and she'd had enough of family and kids and whatever. But then, of course, there she's got this kid. And there's a book called Primetime Women. Marty Bartolet, I think her name is, out of Chicago. And that's exactly where my mother was. It's like enough of this housework and this cooking and family stuff. I want to do something for myself. Primetime women are described as 55 to 70. Family is gone pretty much, and now it's time for you. You're still healthy so that you can reach out. So reflecting on, on how she treated me, it was kind of like, could somebody take her somewhere? Like, get that noise out of out of the way. I remember one time I grew up on a farm. We lived on a farm, and I go cut the grass. So we had this old lawnmower. So I'm cutting the lawn, and on the lawn there was a piece of like an old hanger, piece of wire, and it flew up and went right into my leg. So I'm
Oh my
down.
goodness.
It was really hurting, and I am screaming, and she's not coming because I was always making noise. Finally, she came, and it was like, I could have died. You weren't even caring. No, very, very, very funny. But when I reflect back on her, because my dad was the boss of everything, and he had all the money and he controlled the money. If you got to go buy groceries, then you're given $50 or $20 or whatever it was. But she just managed her reality. But at the same time, she did what I just said, which is, who am I? What are my talents? What do I want? How can I enhance my own existence? And so this was all soul searching. Like, I can never remember her complaining to my dad, like, oh, that's not enough money. She just knew that if you complained, that created more controversy. So don't complain.
Mm,
Like, just figure it out and work within, you mentioned boundaries, work within your boundaries and find a way to bring all of this forward. And that's exactly what she did, which is, it's incredible to have that inner fortitude and purpose and determination just to live within those boundaries, but at the same time, find a way to rise higher, which is what she did. She's a homemaker, she's in the country. So she started this homemade jam business, was very proud of it. She had different big organizations that came along and wanted to buy it, take it over. But no, she didn't. I mean, she could have had a whole lot more money had she done that.
right.
But her
Uh-huh.
existence at that point was this product that she created that was
Mm.
100% pure, and the label that she created. And she was the only person that could put the labels on these jars because it had to be perfectly straight. Nobody was allowed to do that. But that was what she was so proud of. And of course, fast forward, as people would come to visit, we had a farm with pick your own strawberries and raspberries and all that sort of thing. My dad started to become very proud of her to the point where
Mm.
he would offer some of her jam as a gift, as a special gift to somebody. And she just smiled with a twinkle in her eye, like, this is the ultimate compliment. But she wouldn't be sarcastic and say, if you'd been, none of this. She just kept the negativity right to a minimum. She just didn't stir controversy. And she could have done that so many times. And that reminds me of, often on these podcasts, I tell people to live your life like a split screen. So when the negative pops up, fade it to black. Just get rid of it and default to the positive. And she would have defaulted to, well, at least I've got my little business that I can work away at. I think I'm going to make peach jam today. Whatever. But default to everything that is working, that's a plus, that's a positive in your life. And when these negatives pop up, just fade to black. Get them out of the way. And they always
Mhm.
pop up first. And they're the ones that we tend to focus on and problem solve around. And often we dig ourselves deeper when we spend time on it. Get it out of the
Mhm.
way. Just get it out of the way.
Yeah, oh my God. And that's just so beautiful. But I think what you said about her is that she really focused on the reality of
Right.
things and what can be handled, what can be done, what cannot be done. And I think that is probably the most powerful thing that we can do because a lot of times we go into this like you said, the passive aggressive mode or resentment mode is because we're complaining about things that wasn't done or complaining about things that just not happening or not the reality. But that level of I think, wisdom to kind of stick with. Okay, this is what's happening. This is my life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say my husband just came along to offer me more coffee. It's like, no. But it's amazing. He said she was, in my lifetime, the finest person I've ever met. Now, isn't that incredible for him to say that about his mother-in-law? And he says that because she was always generous. Like, she would listen to you and how are you, and then she'd tell you stories and you'd listen to her, but always generous, always offering, "Can I fix you a coffee? Can I" whatever, always reaching out, not overdoing it, but really conscious of the other person and extending her generosity. And it's interesting because I was on a panel last week with a business called Grow Your Biz. It's all women business owners. And they asked us how we define success. And this, of course, would come from her role modeling is that you give more than you take. So that's how I define success. You give more than you take. Like your life is not all about you in terms of what you can get. It's your life in terms of what can you share. And I thought that that is so true. I mean, that's where I get a lot of pleasure is if I can go out of my way for somebody else and help them. Why wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you?
Mm. And what is your mother's relationship with wealth and money?
Well, again, my dad was the investor in the stock market. And growing up in the country, if I missed the bus, then he would have to drive me, which was 15 miles, and I would get fined. I had to pay a fine. But while I'm in the car, you know how you got your stock quotes was with the paper. So we'd get a paper, and then he'd call out his holdings, and I'd call out what it closed at. Well, she's surrounded by this, and they didn't have a joint account. She decided that she was going to, because now she's making her own money. It isn't grocery money that she's investing, it's her own money that she's earned. So she subscribed to the Financial Post. Now, you having lived in Canada would know, but the Financial Post was all about companies and investments and all that sort of thing, and it came in the mail. So you can imagine how current the information was. Anyway, what she decided to invest in was she would read articles about the CEO of the company. Who is this person? And of course, it was always a man and what their approach was to running their business. And then that's what she would decide she was going to invest in. And so over the years, she just kept on investing. And in the story, you probably read that with the proceeds of her portfolio, she took some proceeds and bought herself a new piano. She had an old piano that she played exceptionally well, but she liked this new manufacturer of this piano and so, in effect, wanted to give them business, but also wanted a new piano and was very proud of the fact that she could buy this with her own proceeds. So she loved to take a risk, but it was a careful risk, a very careful
Mm.
risk. But she was definitely a risk taker. She was a terrific bridge player as well. And more often than not, she would bid up because she would say, it's better to go down and lose points than let the opposition get the contract and get more points than what it would have been to go down, 2 or whatever. And we used to laugh at her because she had an arthritic finger and she'd say, you've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a strategy. And so, but this all came from her not focusing on everything that wasn't working. She
Mm.
really had a mindset of what do I have? How can I bring my uniqueness forward and have some fun doing it and then making some money and on we go from there.
Mm. I really find that incredibly touching. It's just that her ability just focus on what she actually can control and what she has.
Yes.
And for a lot of people in this day and age with social media, we seem to spend a lot of time comparing ourselves
Right.
with others. So
Right.
therefore, that lack mentality, what we don't have, what I don't have, well, she has it, he has it. I think a lot of us struggle with that. What would your advice to someone like me or even anyone who's listening that tend to kind of have that conflicting, feelings? Oh no, like, am I comparing myself again?
I think you just when you see yourself getting caught into that, say, "Oh my goodness." Now, you would not have a weight problem, I do. So you look at somebody and say, "I really would like to be 20 pounds lighter." And then it's like, "Well, you know what? I'm not so sure that they're as healthy as they seem to be. I am healthy." So you gotta default back to yourself and say, "You know what? So what? So what?" Like, stop it. Just stop it. Because your brain only has so much capacity to focus on whatever. So what are you gonna focus on? Like, really, what are you gonna focus on? And focus on the things that you like to do, that you're good at doing, and just find a way to do more. Really. Because it's so easy to get caught up in all of that, really. And, giving more than you take is a great way because the focus is not on you. It's on somebody else. It's on what are you giving to that person? And, go out of your way to do that. Think about what you can do and how you can do it. And it can be something as simple as I saw a thing on Facebook, I think. I said, if you see somebody without a smile, give them one of yours. Like, how simple is that? That's just
Yeah,
but it's all about focusing on the other person and giving them something of yours. Open the door for somebody. Just when you do things like that, it really takes the focus off yourself and what you're missing, possibly, that then causes you not to feel so great.
absolutely. I'm so curious because you just mentioned something I felt like I have to ask. You mentioned that your mom would often invest based on her reading of the founder of the company, their principle and their mentality. And that's really interesting because would that be something that you still would advise people to do? Because we often get so attracted by the numbers and not the person who is doing the business. So, what do you think about that in today's society?
Well, it's a perfect thought because we all know how well Warren Buffett did. And so we've gotten a snapshot of who Warren Buffett is. He's still living in the same house he always lived in. He's still driving, not a brand new car, but very, very modest, but just a really, really solid person. And he places a huge value on integrity. I think he's got three things that he focuses on for success. And it's kind of like integrity first, and then maybe one or two others, and then go back to number one, because that's the most important of all. And recently, actually, you could dial this up and share it. He sent a final Thanksgiving message, and his final thought was just be kind because it compounds as much as any investment does. So, an investment in kindness compounds as well. But back to your point, pay attention to, yes, who is running this company and what are they doing? What kind of a person is that? And of course, what is the business that they are leading?
Correct. And in your expert opinions, do you see the relationship between how someone run their business and how they carry themselves and how that affect the business and the performance of the business?
Definitely. 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 There was a profile of the CEO of JP Morgan and how he chose not to invest in Trump's ballroom when he did, even though it's probably good for business, but it's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. So really, really do pay attention. Who is this person and who is this person that is running this company? And to the best of your ability, find out what kind of a person they really are. And that helps you then decide, is this a good company to invest in? Elon Musk apparently said to Mackenzie Scott, well, threw out a comment, I wish you'd stop investing in so many women's organizations. She said, okay, fine. I'm going to double what I'm giving them. Everybody loves Moxie, and I love Moxie from women. It's like, stop. I'll do whatever I want to do. And I'm not paying any attention to you.
Goodness, I love that. I love that story. I mean, is there something that you kind of wish that you could share? I mean, in a way, you definitely do, but is there something that you kind of wish to ask your mom today now that
Well,
you've built your empire of helping women?
no, we would have had a great time. We would have had because she died 2 years before I started in the business. And I know we would have had a lot of conversations, a lot of back and forth. So that really was unfortunate. I'll tell you one final mom story. She had this one account, probably her biggest. I don't know if you remember Cullen Barnes in Toronto, Agincourt. It was a big, it was a farm, and then they turned it into a whole tourist attraction. And that was one of her top accounts. And so, in order for her production, she had one person who worked for her. She needed to know what the orders would be. And so she would start in the spring because the production would be in the summer, and then the product would be delivered in the fall because obviously Christmas, holiday season was a big part of it. So she started the approach, no response, followed up, respectfully, nothing, all the way along through the summer. And she's getting really, really anxious. And she knew the CEO well, the owner, but she didn't want to bother him. She didn't want to go to him. But we were all together Thanksgiving weekend, which is the second weekend in October in Canada. And so she was telling us, what do I do? I've done this, I've done that. Anyway, we all agreed she's got to call the CEO. So in those days, you didn't phone, you wrote a letter. And she had a typewriter and two fingers like this. So she puts a letter in the mail on the Tuesday. And of course, it arrives a week later. That Thursday, she went to her doctor, was diagnosed with indigestion, which is a common misdiagnosis for women in heart disease, died in the middle of the night. We were completely shocked because she'd been so healthy on the weekend when we saw her. Gone, we were just shocked. Anyway, so then, of course, the CEO gets the letter and phones, and then we have to tell him. And he said, he is just so sorry. He said what had happened was this whole jam section, jam and homemade honey and maple syrup, that sort of thing. The person who was managing it didn't know what he was doing. And so the instructions were take your top 3, and that's all we're going to carry from now on. Anyway, hers was one of the top 3. So we did have inventory, and we met part of the order. But I told my dad, I said, okay, when you die, tell her we got the order. She never knew that she got the order. Tell her we got the order. Anyway, she would laugh about that. But,
No.
who knows? I mean, life goes on in really, really weird ways. But, to this day, we still laugh about that. And then she also had little single jars that were all, wrapped up with a decoration on the top. And we had a whole bunch of those. Well, this is a pure product. It has to be used quickly. So our daughter's school was celebrating their 90th anniversary, and that was about the number of students that we had. So we packaged these all up, and every little student at that school got a little jar of jam. So we found a way to disperse of all the product quickly, which was fabulous.
Oh my goodness, how creative. And that just, yeah, it just seems like there is always a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To figure it out. And, life happens. We were just so, so shocked. And Monday was her favorite day of the week because that's when you got to do what you wanted to do, like it's back to work. So she died on the Friday and the funeral was on Monday. So she had a perfect, and really she was almost 83. She was a month away from being 83. And heart disease is in her family and my family. And she was always fearful that she might have a stroke and be laid up. So at the end of the day, when we came to terms with it all, we were very happy that she died just like that. It's a reality that we all have to face, and we never want people to go. But on the other hand, everybody's going to go. Nobody gets out of here alive.
Yeah. That is the constant.
Yes,
Which,
exactly.
yeah. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
I just love, and I also love how you tell the story. It's just like because it's a memory you carry with such joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she left me, I was the executor for her estate, and she did leave me her jam business, but I'm not in the jam business. But what I'd always wanted to do, and you're reminding me that this was something that I had thought about doing, is to have a book with a jam recipe, but then a motivational saying on the other page, like just like a little gift book. So
Right.
you're reminding me that I need to get that one back on the roster and focus on it.
I love that. I'm so looking forward to that.
Okay.
I would love to have a copy. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I would love to ask you about something that I ask every single guest is this notion of soft power. And before I kind of explain what I think about soft power, because it actually kind of changes all the time, I would love to hear your definition of soft power.
Well, I love the word power, but you're right. You don't have to be aggressive and in people's face to bring forth your power. And I guess my definition would be simply to give more than you take. I mean, that in itself is a powerful act to stop focusing on yourself, but focusing on you as a catalyst to bring some joy to somebody else. And I guess that would be my definition of soft power.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love that when you described your mom and how she can look at a reality as it is, but also work within her boundaries
Boundaries.
and right. And to me, that sounds like it is a soft power because it's that quiet resilience
Right,
that no one sees, but it's within her. And, but that carried her throughout and also, I'm sure, throughout a lot of different obstacles as well.
right. Well, good for you, Sherry. Keep up the good work. Keep those
Yeah,
guests coming and share your advice with all your listeners, which is wonderful. That's really good. Really good.
thank you.
You're
Yeah, I
welcome.
mean, I love doing this, and honestly, I just could not imagine a better night talking to you.
Thank you.
For my listeners, I mean, is there anything that you would like to share with them? Just a final takeaway.
Well, with Women Worth and Wellness, the next focus will be on women's age of integrity. And that's all about bringing your uniqueness forward. You can do that from a philanthropic standpoint, but you can also do it by taking action and really stepping out and stepping up because the world really, really, really needs more women leaders, really. And they don't have to be the ones that are the CEO of this, that, and whatever else, or the president or the whatever. Just bring your uniqueness forward and spend time thinking about what is your uniqueness, because your uniqueness is your gift. How do I bring it forward? And in doing so, you're really enhancing your own well being.
And in a way, we are our own leaders,
Right,
right? Yeah. And we lead families just like your mom. She is a great leader of the family. And that allows you to actually and do this and also give back to the society, the
right,
world, and just be our own leaders to begin
exactly.
with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you
Exactly.
so much, Nancy, for
You're
joining
welcome.
me today.
All the very best, Sherry. Keep up all your great work.
Thank you. I will.
You're, you're welcome.